Hello Pokemon fans, I'm Professor K for the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and today we have a deck profile of my good friend Jacob. He's actually sitting right across from me, but he didn't want to be in the video, so. Anyways, we've got a very blinged out Seismitoad Giratina deck. It is very powerful in Standard, and this particular deck is very pretty, like I said. So for Deck Tech Thursday, we're going to be profiling it. We got ourselves, the first card here is going to be 3 copies of Seismitoad EX, which of course is used for Quaking Punch, 30 damage, and your opponent can't play any item cards from his or her hand, which is really strong. With as much item-based draw support and everything else that's in the format right now, it really shuts down a lot of decks. Seismitoad is still a threat, even though it has lost some stuff, including obviously the Laser Bank and everything else. Next up here, we've got 2 copies of Giratina EX. It's got an ability called Renegade Pulse, preventing all effects of attacks, including damage, done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Mega Evolution Pokemon. So Megas aren't a huge threat in the game right now, but they aren't completely gone either, so this ability is actually really good. Not to mention the attack. The attack is really what makes this card playable right now. Chaos Wheel for a Grass, Psychic, and a double colorless deals 100 damage, and your opponent can't play any Pokemon Tool, Special Energy, or Stadium cards from his or her hand during his or her next turn. So that means things like Night March can't play their DCEs, anything that needs to play a Stadium. Specifically, more than anything, Night March and Trevenant are the 2 that really need Dimension Valley. They can't put them down, and it's just very strong. And 100 damage is nothing to scoff at either, especially when you have access to double Dragon Energy that does work with this, and a DCE that you're already playing for Seismitoad in the first place. So Giratina EX is a very good attacker. In combination, they are very powerful. Alright, we've got 2 copies of Shaman EX here for setup ability, being able to bench it and draw up to 6 cards into your hand, really helping you get the stuff you need for an early start and that early item lock on your opponent. We got 1 copy of Hoopa EX as well. Obviously, you're only playing 5 basics for attackers, not to mention you can get your Shamans with this, and with the ability Scoundrel Ring. So when you play it down, you can search for up to 3 Pokemon EX, except for other Hoopas, and you can reveal them and put them into your hand. So this is really good for getting the Shamans, like I said, for getting the Seismitoads, for getting the Giratinas out as fast as possible. Also, the deck plays one other interesting line here, and that is going to be a 1/1 line of Slowpoke and Slowking. Slowpoke, obviously, you're going to need to have Slowking in the first place, but Slowking has an ability, Royal Flush. Once during your turn before you attack, you may flip a coin. If heads, move an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon to one of his or her benched Pokemon. So in a deck that already plays a lot of shenanigans in the first place with Seismitoad and Giratina, this just adds to the headaches that can happen for you if they're playing Slowking and they can flip heads. Moving energy off the active is really strong against a lot of decks, and it's definitely annoying. You just have to hope they don't flip heads, or you are already playing something that blocks abilities in the first place, like Greninja Shadow Stitching or Hex Maniac or something like that. That's it for the Pokemon lineup. Now we're going to move on to the supporters. We've got 4 copies of Professor Sycamore, an obvious deck staple in any format, whether it be expanded or standard. So you can discard your hand, draw 7 cards. Next up, 2 copies of Lysander. 2 copies is really strong. It actually worked really well against me in the matchup we just had here at our League Challenge. It kept me from winning the matchup, so 2 copies of Lysander. We've got a copy of Xerosic, being able to discard a tool card or a special energy off your opponent's Pokemon. Always strong. I play one of those in Greninja as well for a lot of reasons. We've got ourselves an AZ. When your Seismitoad or your Giratina get a lot of damage, you can AZ it up and heal off all the damage. You can pick up a Shaman, put it back down, draw for more cards into your hand, and you could also do the same with Hoopa and get more EX Pokemon if you need to. So AZ is very strong. Set that over here. We've got 1 copy of Judge. Each player shuffles his or her hand into his or her deck and draws 4 cards. With the lack of N, at least until Fates Collide starts up, Judge is basically the best card for that purpose, for shuffle draw. But N's coming back soon, so Judge will be irrelevant in pretty much no time at this point. We're looking at about 3-4 weeks to go. Or at least at the time of filming, because I don't know when I'm going to be putting this video up. So we're probably really close to the point where N is going to be making a difference. Next up here, we've got 1 copy of Team Flare Grunt. Discard an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon, whether it be special or basic energy. Team Flare Grunt gets rid of all the types of energy off your active, further adding to the frustration that this deck can cause. Final supporter we have here is a Hex Maniac. Hex Maniac will shut off your opponent's abilities until their next turn. It shuts off Giant Water Shuriken, it shuts off their Shamans, it shuts off a lot of things that are very, very strong in the game right now. And VS Seeker Hex Maniac chains are pretty much Greninja's worst nightmare. Set that down. Next up, we are going on to our items. Be prepared for the bling here because it's very pretty. We got 4 copies of VS Seeker. VS Seeker, put a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand. 4 of them is pretty much a staple in any deck, expanded or standard at this point. Very, very few decks run 3, and none of them run less than that. Next up here, we've got 4 copies of Trainer's Mail. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal a trainer card you find there, except for other Trainer Mail, and put it into your hand. Then you can shuffle the other cards back into your deck. Trainer's Mail is becoming a staple, very, very much so. I run 3 in my Greninja, but a lot of people run 4 of these just for how powerful it can be to get other trainer cards. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Not the shiny ones, but they are reversed, so they're still pretty. Being able to discard 2 cards and getting a Pokemon out, not only does it help you bring your hand size down for Shaman, but you can get out any kind of Pokemon that you want with Ultra Ball. Really good card. And recently just got another reprint, so we're going to have Ultra Ball around for quite some time. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Puzzle of Time. This card is interesting for 2 different reasons. It can be used in 2 ways. You've got the first effect where you can play 1 card, look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put them back in any order. Or you can play 2 of them and put 2 cards from your discard pile back into your hand. So with this deck, the biggest problem is running out of energy. So if they've got DCE or Double Dragon Energy in the discard pile, but they have 2 Puzzle of Times in hand, they can play them, get 2 of them, and put them back into their hand. So that's frustrating when you finally run your opponent out of energy, and then they just play 2 Puzzle of Times and get it right back. So that's a very strong card in this deck. Set that down. We've got 3 copies of Crushing Hammer. Crushing Hammer, flip a coin. If heads, discard an energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon, whether it be active or on the bench. Basic or special energy. So energy denial is a key factor of this deck because it doesn't put out a high amount of damage. Obviously, Giratina can hit fairly hard, but Seismitoad dealing 30 damage a turn. You need to have ways to slow your opponent down and make them run out of resources. Crushing Hammer does that pretty effectively as long as you're good at flipping heads. Next up, 3 copies of Super Scoop Up. As I said, denying your opponent prizes is a key thing with this deck, and being able to Super Scoop Up away all the damage off of one of your Pokemon is really, really strong, provided you can flip heads in order to do so. So set that over there. Next up, we've got 2 copies of Fighting Fury Belt. The basic Pokemon this card is attached to gets an additional 40 HP, and its attacks do 10 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So you're basically a Muscle Band minus 10 and adding 40 HP, making your Seismitoads go up to 220 HP. Your Giratina is up to 210. That's mega-sized Pokemon. It's very, very strong, and it still gives you a little bit of a damage boost as well. Very powerful card. Next up, 2 copies of Floatstone. In order to get something out of the active, preferably a Shaman or a Hoopa. If they get Lysandered and you can't get out of the position, at least Floatstones will help you get free retreat out of the active position. Next up, 2 copies of Headringer. Headringer forces your opponent's Pokemon attacks to cost 1 colorless energy more if they're attached to it. Pokemon EX only, not breaks, not basics, not anything like that. But EX Pokemon, they're required to attach 1 more energy in order to use their attacks. Set that down. We got 1 copy of Enhanced Hammer. Discard a special energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon. No coin flip required. Just get rid of it and definitely make them pay for it. So there's that. Next up, 2 copies of Team Aqua's Secret Base. This is a really cool card in this deck. It actually caught me off guard a little bit because I'm not too familiar with Seismitoad Giratina in the current standard format, but the retreat cost of each Pokemon in play except for Team Aqua Pokemon is 1 colorless energy more. So Greninja, for instance, that gets free retreat usually has to pay 1 in order to retreat to use Giant Water Shuriken, and it doesn't run a whole lot of energy in the first place. So running 8 energy in that deck for me, obviously it makes me burn resources, and I have to get them back with Super Rod or Fisherman later on in the game. But it's definitely strong, doesn't let you retreat very easily at all. Next up, we got our energy lines. We've got 4 copies of Double Dragon Energy for Giratina's attack. Being a grass and a psychic energy, this will provide any type of energy as long as it's attached to a dragon Pokemon. So it meets that requirement, and then you can just attach the DCE, be able to attack from there. So 4 copies of that. And finally, 4 copies of double colorless energy. Used for Seismitoad, use it for Giratina, use it for Shaman, for Sky Return. The whole deck is composed of special energy. So there we go. That's going to be it for that. And that is the deck. I actually really like the deck. It's a lot of fun from what I can see. I can see this deck causing a lot of salt in the matchups, that is for certain. So I want to give a big thank you to Jacob sitting over there for letting me profile this deck. And obviously it's extremely pretty. Yeah, I'm jealous. I'm just going to say that. But definitely did a great job putting it together. Had a couple of ties in the league challenge today. Otherwise, I'm sure he would have done a lot better. One of those ties being me, but still managed a 4th place finish with this deck here at the Spring Hill League Challenge. All right, guys, that's going to do it. That's the deck. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below, and of course, subscribe for more TCG content here on the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and we will see you guys next time. I'm Professor K. See you later.